The Long Way Home, Chapter 20, Effort. He'd known what he was doing. He'd known the cost. But he wouldn't take his choice back, even if he could. Even so, Vincent's darker, more selfish aspect bitterly wished that he'd been a little more cowardly. Then again, that part of him hadn't ever had anything approaching a good idea in its life, so Vincent didn't have much trouble ignoring it. Two things sustained him. The first was living up to Cadet's assessment of him, and the second was a conversation with the George boy, with the chief, with Jason. He'd known what was coming. He knew they had time to deal with it, so he told the boy what he'd done. "I dumped my stash," Vincent had said, when he found him in his weight room working the heavy bag alone again. In spite of everything, Jason was still innocent enough to let his pure, delighted, optimistic pride in Vincent recover shine through a perfect calendar. "That's wonderful, Uncle Vincent." Vincent had reluctantly allowed Jason's smile to infect his own face for a brief moment before he said, Maybe it will be, but you need to be ready for what's coming. I've seen enough very special episodes to know what withdrawal is a thing," the chief had said, with buoyant, youthful cheer. "But you're not by yourself anymore, so we'll look after you and the long way. Besides, if it gets too bad, we have an autodoser." Vincent grunted an acknowledgement and asked, "Blowing off steam with a heavy bag?" "Nah," the kid said with a candor. "The bag's just a good workout. Cardio, strength, technique all at once. Honestly, I'd like a bigger weight room and a sturdy wall to huck a medicine ball at, but hey-ho." "Yeah, she's a small ship," Vincent had replied defensively. "A good ship. You're a brave man. Brave in a way that a lot of men in your shoes wouldn't even try to be. And I want you to know that," the boy had said suddenly, with a big goofy grin melded with childhood seriousness and pride in his voice. "Thanks, Chief," Vincent had replied, past the lump in his throat. "It'll take about 3 or 4 days for me to get right again. Do me a favor and pick up my slack until then, will you? I got your back, Uncle Vincent. Your family." That was more than enough to sustain any man. Everybody needed him. Tondre needed him to help find her courage. Cadet needed him to know that he belonged somewhere. Vi needed him to know that she was appreciated for all the little things that she did to make life enjoyable so far from home. Vincent needed him to stand sentinel over his recovery. Isis Magdalene needed him to keep her safe from the creatures of nightmares. Everybody needed Jason George, and that was a lot to put on the shoulders of an 11-year-old boy. He was strong enough to hold all that up, though, since he had to be, seeing as how everyone needed him. Today, while Vincent struggled to keep everybody from noticing the subtle trembling in his fingers, ears, and even his usually sedated tail, Jason was needed to make sure that Tondre didn't shove her foot directly in her mouth. To be fair, that wasn't exactly anything new, but on the other hand, Isis Magdalene wasn't helping anything by being such a prickly aristocrat, entirely ignorant of the code of honor Tondre held sacred. It was a heave-ho altogether, just like any other day under sail, though, so Jason wasn't about to shirk his bit. Isis Magdalene was in her customary seat on the sofa, out of the way, relatively still and quiet, and making a valiant but largely ineffective attempt at projecting regal poise. When Tondre strode up to her and asked, "Do you wish for something to do?" Jason figured it could have been worse. Isis Magdalene folded her arms in front of herself and largely failed to keep the defensive edge out of her voice as she answered, "I know not what I should do." Tondre shook her head, such that her long braids swung like a lashing tail, before she blurted out, "Read, draw, use the weight room, watch a movie, hum a tune, talk to somebody. Just something other than sitting there like you're too good for what we have to offer." Jason saw the scarlet shade in Isis Magdalene's face deepen slightly, so he interjected, "To us, to the Starseeders, if a guest doesn't ask their host for anything and just sits there like you are, we don't take it like you're just trying to keep out of the way. You're calling us bad hosts and the long way an unwelcoming ship." Jason found the way Isis Magdalene's eyes bulged with alarm amusing, and didn't bother hiding that as she stammered, No, that is not what I intended. Far from it. Seems as how my care has been thrust upon you by the winds of fate, as it were." "You are a castaway upon the sea," Tondre bluntly told her, and Jason could suppress an exaggerated sigh at her expectation that such a pithy statement would explain anything. "Any decent ship," Jason calmly elaborated, "will take in a castaway right away, and a castaway has the guest right until they can safely leave of their own will." "Confusion grows," Isis Magdalene demurely murmured. "What is the guest right?" "How about we all sit down together first? Do you mind moving to the table?" Jason asked, and Isis Magdalene's regal nod and graceful rise to do as she had been asked was reply enough. Tondre's deliberate steps and focused stillness of her hands as she sat down across from the other girl in the dinette told Jason all he needed to know about how this was going as she slid in beside her and gave one of her right hands a subtle comforting squeeze beneath the table. She relaxed a little and let out a shaky voice as Jason said, "I figured it might help if you told us what a guest is supposed to do in the Exarch Reformation." Isis Magdalene's severe face suddenly took on a soft, pretty cast as a delightful smile broke across it as she exclaimed, Oh, that idea is mighty in wisdom to us when beneath the tents of another, though in truth tents are rare indeed, but one suppose a roof counts. It is polite to await the attention of the host. The host may have little to share or have many duties to attend to, and so the guest is expected to not interfere until the host has time, food and water, and care to spare. Meanwhile, the host is expected to make suggestions or offers to the guest, which are accepted with gratitude unless there is a good reason not to. That's not how it works in the fleets at all, Trondre said. If you're a guest on another ship's deck, you ought to know that her crew doesn't know you, won't know what you like or want, and so you speak up. Hosts try their best to give guests what they ask for, and a duty of the ship never ends. So time and attention will be found when you ask for it. Since you were trying to be polite, though, I guess it's not an insult. I have naught but gratitude towards you and your ship, Isis Magdalene said seriously. I had no intention of offering insult, yet now I still know that what I ought to do. Each of you has duties, the work goes on unending, and should I offer my help, such as it is, should that also not be considered an insult? That, Jason said with a wry grin, depends on the ship. On a passenger liner or a long-haul trader or even a reeve, you'd be right. But this is a little yacht. The only thing we're trying to do is get back to friendly civilization, and to stay sane while we do it. If you think that you can help with that, we'd love to hear you out. Aye, we would, Trondre agreed somberly. But as for that, Isis Magdalene said, I was in training to become an assistant advocate in the courts of dispute. She trailed off for a moment, no doubt realizing that her interlocutors didn't have the context to understand. A legal assistant, she amended. So it is doubtful that I shall be of any use here. Nobody is made up of one duty or interest, Trondre pressed. How about hobbies? On occasion, I do sometimes enjoy sewing garments, Isis Magdalene murmured softly, and I am not so sheltered that I know not how to keep tidy. Otherwise, my like of poetry and romance films should be of little use. Having somebody else with good taste around all these boys would be very useful, Trondre said with a grave nod. Hey, Jason objected. I have great taste. You can tell, since I don't ever pick the sappy love movie. See what I mean? Trondre asked teasingly. I can't believe this, Jason explained with hammy faux outrage. Betrayed, wounded, cast down. Dramatic, Isis Magdalene observed flatly, which sent all three children into a fit of giggling. The first day wasn't so bad. Just a little stress, a little headache, and some minor trembles that Vincent had pretty sure nobody noticed. Well, the George boy might have. The first day wasn't so bad. He could even pull his shift on watch like he usually did. The first day wasn't so bad until the old man tried to sleep. Sleep. The entire reason Vincent had turned to the bottle in the first place, and he had chosen. There was no turning back, so the only thing to do was to get stuck into the fight. It certainly felt like a fight, anyway. Vincent tossed his comforter and quilt to the floor to escape the unbearable heat. He tossed and turned and panted beneath the thin sheet that even so felt scarce and cloying, and the ever-present droning hum of his home began to echo in his ears. His mind raced, and not merely his dark, selfish aspect. Every choice, from deciding to not bother checking on a pirate's destination to jettisoning his stash, was examined, turned over, and criticized by an increasingly frantic intensity. By the time his cabin night cycled from the dimness of his defined night to what he considered morning, he snatched less than an hour of sleep. That hour was anything but restful. He dreamed of smoke in the wind, of fire on the horizon, and of blood on the snow. He dreamed of the day his peace was killed. He woke with eyes wide with terror and fury, and an anguished howl bubbling in his throat. But he clamped his teeth around it before it could escape. Vincent stumbled from his bed and at some point found himself standing under a steady stream of hot water from a shower head with the forlorn hope that the heat would help with the headache that had grown from a dull irritant to a pulsing throb of distracting pain subside. The 2 capsules that somebody had left in the cup by the sink did more than hot water, and Vincent swallowed his pride in not using up medical supplies along with them. Unbidden had come the ironic thought that he'd been the only one who needed any kind of medical attention. That thought brought a pained chuckling out of him as Vincent got dressed, and took care to walk as normally as possible to the galley. The George boy had been ahead of him, though. There was a cool glass of honeyed water and a steaming mug of game broth waiting for him, and Vi stood by with worried anticipation should he need further nourishment. So worried for him was she that Vi asked Vincent, Should I make some oatmeal or something? Vincent forced a wan smile across his face and tried to take the paint edge out of his voice as he said, "Thanks, sweetie, but I don't think I can keep more than this down." Is there anything I can do?" she asked, with the uncertain but earnest compassion of a young girl. "What did the chief tell you about?" Vincent began to ask before trading off. "Just that you were going to be sick for a couple of days and you were trying to tough it out," she answered, but continued. "Cadet did that squinty thing he does when he doesn't quite believe what we tell him, though." "Close enough," Vincent groaned. "Where is everybody?" "Tran's down in the interim, and Isis Magdalene is in our room. I think she couldn't sleep her, so she wouldn't get up. And Cadet is in the weight room, but Jason just started a watch. Why?" "Just wondering. Did you wait for me?" It's important that everyone eats." Vincent didn't quite have to force a smile to say, "Thanks, sweetie. Thanks." On the bridge, Jason once again watched hyperspace slip by. In its twisting and swirling colors, he could see something. The chaotic spray of colors had hidden it in the clear path of what to do next. So he bowed his head, made the sign of the cross, folded his hands and began. "Saint Joseph, man of duty, man of God, man of strength, hear a child's plea. It is George again. Vincent needed a family, so I brought him into mine, just as Christ needed a father on earth. So you became his. Now, he has repaid the family with courage worthy of any George, but his fight isn't over. He'll need help to keep the old darkness away from his heart while his body gets right again. So please, look after him as you can." "Terra herself," came Vincent's gruff rumble from behind him. "I'll be okay, Jason. I'll be okay." Jason was a little surprised that he'd missed the hash on the galley cycling during his prayer, but he craned his neck to cast a disapproving eye over his adopted uncle before he told him, "Yes, and we're going to make sure of that, God himself included." Vincent slowly sank into the pilot's chair and said, "Relax, Chief. This just so happens to be my favorite chair. I don't fancy going back to bed just yet, but I thought I'd chill out here with you." "Any reason for that?" "A couple," Vincent rumbled. "First, you're good company. Second, I kind of like the colors of the hyper. Third, if I fall asleep in this chair, you'll kick me out at shift change, and I'll have had a nice nap." "It'll be about lunchtime when my watch ends," Jason mused. "How's your stomach?" "I haven't puked up the broth you had Vi heat up for me." "She and Isis Magdalene are the only ones who don't know, by the way. Tran and Cadet saw your stash when you got hurt last week. Gosh, that was a week ago. More. I think by now I must be—" "I think it's 2 weeks by now," Vincent said evenly. "With all you kids aboard, it's almost like home. She's not a ship anymore," Vincent mused as Jason watched him sink deeper into his seat. "Aye," Jason told him. "That's what happens when there's a family aboard." "Yeah," Vincent said in a hoarse near whisper. "I guess so." The remainder of the watch passed in silence, or at least with little conversation, which, so far as Vincent's head was concerned, wasn't a terrible thing. However, despite the exhaustion and painkillers, Vincent's pounding head had denied him all but the briefest snatches at supplemental sleep. They bid Trundre a good watch as they passed her on the way into the galley and away into the cockpit, and she thanked them in her usual straightforward way. Despite his sorry state of affairs, he had offered to spot Jason in his daily workout over a sandwich for the boys' lunch and a bowl of oatmeal with 2 fried eggs for his, both provided with anxious alacrity by Vi. The chief had politely told him that he planned on just doing a little light cardio on the treadmill and spending some time with the heavy bag, and he should probably take it easy anyway. Their clear, buoyant voices were like bells thunderously ringing in his ears. "Mr. Vincent," Vi's small, quiet voice, full of childish, hesitant concern, painfully thundered, You don't look so good." Vincent failed utter to keep the pain from his voice despite how soft she made it. "I don't feel all that good, sweetie." "Can I help?" Vincent's valiant attempt at a smile came out as a grimace as he told her, Not more than you already are." "It's just," she nearly whispered, You're shaking all over."
"I know,"
Vincent said through gritted teeth as he gripped the table to steady himself.
"It's normal for... Well, you don't have to worry. I'll be better soon."
"Will you?" came a thunderously quiet avian croaking question from the short corridor leading to the rooms. Vincent did a poor job at suppressing a pained wince and turned his bleary eyes to Cadet as he answered, "Yes." "Jason says it's not his story to tell," the boy said, more quietly, for all the good that did for his ears. "So do I get to know? Do I get to know about Cal?" Vincent looked down at Vi, who looked up at him with no attempt to disguise her worry for him, and back to Cadet, who did a dreadful job of concealing his worry. "I guess," Vincent began, "I guess you want to understand how I got myself into this trouble." So he told him. He told them about the family that the pirates had killed, and how he'd never found Cal. He told them that he'd started just taking the edge off with a shot before bed to keep the nightmares down. He told them that stopped working after a while. He told them that eventually the nightmares and painful memories invaded his waking hours. He told them that he knew he'd have to suffer through this eventually when they'd realized that they were stranded far from home, and that he could get through. "Old man," Cadet said softly, "you did this on purpose?"
"It was suffer now or suffer later. Now we're in hyperspace and not likely to get shunted or pulled. Later, who knows? Later might be while we're under attack, or low on food, or when, God forbid, one of you is hurt or sick. It's time I stop running."
End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Casper Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.